Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to I Hate Rock Music, and I'm going to do a couple more videos this week. And this video is going to be on Ray Owen's Moon, which turns out to be fairly obscure even amongst a lot of my collector friends. And a really interesting band. Ray Owen, of course, was the original vocalist for Juicy Lucy on their debut 1969 album and had a big hit with Who Do You Love? And then he was out of the band. I couldn't find any information on whether he was squeezed out of the band or he left the band, which would have a lot of bearing on what his attitude was when he formed his new band. So I get the impression that maybe he was interested in doing something different, or maybe he wanted to prove himself if he got squeezed out of Juicy Lucy. But his follow-up band, Ray Owen's Moon, is a real monster, and really, as far as I'm concerned, musically eclipsed what he did with Juicy Lucy. One of the things that's particularly interesting about him, of course, is he's a black man in the UK, and by the time he started singing for Ray Owen's Moon, certainly he was adapting kind of a Hendrix sort of look, and he talked a lot about having the spirit of Hendrix in him, and he really brought that to the fore with the Ray Owen's Moon album, which came out on Polydor in 1971. And so the band was basically together from about 69 to 71 or thereabouts. And a really good lineup. Dick Stubbs on guitar, Les Nicole on guitar, Ian McLean on drums, Sid Gardner on bass, and then, of course, Ray Owen on vocals. And I've read a number of reviews that talk about Ray Owen's vocals being kind of annoying, and they're very mannered for sure, but and I would have to acquiesce that they're a little annoying here and there. He's just has such an eccentric style, but it's really interesting to hear vocalists like this with a heavy rock band. And a lot of the heaviness in Ray Owen's Moon comes from the guitar player Les Nicole, who's a monster guitar player. You'll hear it all over this record. And as it turns out, he was in the English group Methuselah that recorded one album for Elektra, and then he ended up in Ray Owen's Moon. And then after that, he appeared on Pavlov's Dogs at the Sound of the Bell, their second album. Then eventually ended up playing with Leo Sayers for quite a few years of all things. So obviously a pretty versatile player, but his lead work on this album is really stunning. And Dick Stubbs and Les Nicole together on guitars is definitely a focal point of this record. And to drive that Hendrix idea home, they do a great version of Voodoo Child, and it's pretty stylized, but it works really well. They really pull it off really well. Obviously, they got the guitar players to do it, and Ray Owen sounds pretty authentic doing it. But the whole album is really strong, really powerful. I definitely would classify it as somewhat heavy rock. There's some Hendrix overtones, but it definitely sounds like a heavy British band. And killer rhythm section, and two great guitar players. So you really can't go wrong. And some of the material is more straightforward, kind of riff oriented, not as much evolved songs, not really complex arrangements or anything. But the arrangements are interesting enough, and definitely shows off the guitar work. The first song right off the bat uh, launches into the song, and then they're barely into it, and the guitar players are all over the place playing some killer leads and just great stuff. And the whole album is really strong. Most all of it's really hard rock. There's a couple of moments where they kind of slow down and get a little spacey, and there's some almost spoken word kind of things, and that definitely smacks of Hendrix kind of influence in the group as well. So unfortunately, they only put out the one album, and even though it's on Polydor, it's just languished in obscurity, even amongst a lot of collectors. But it's totally killer, and it's really unfortunate the band only lasted for one album. What happened to Ray Owens after that? Again, I couldn't really find much information on where he went after that, but he was definitely a bright star at that moment. And like I say, had that success with Juicy Lucy and was a known quantity. And then this Ray Owens Moon record came out, and they got signed to a very major label at the time, Polydor. So killer album from start to finish. As always, I'll put the link below. Check it out. It's definitely a keeper. I highly recommend it. Really nothing to critique about the record whatsoever. So real stunner, Ray Owens Moon. Check it out. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.